morning, folks. It's Rick Spain with Infinite Grace Ministries, and we're here again to share another message that will hopefully help you in your day and in the days ahead. I want to thank Philip Reed and Reed Newspapers for sponsoring us and support the ones who support our community. Yeah, and I mean, this is a worthy cause here. They give us the information, the local information, what's going on in the city, and all these things, and give us a little bit of national news and about as much as what we need, But anyway, I want to start out with a story today about two farmers. They would go drink coffee at the coffee shop, and the one farmer would come in, and he would talk about the how good the rain was, and said, we just had all this rain. It's just going to be benefit our crops. We're going to have a great harvest this year. And the other farmer says, yeah, what's going to happen is it's just going to soak in, it's going to mold, it's going to ruin our crops. And so then he comes in another time, and it's a dry part. He says, well, I'm thankful for the heat and dry temperatures that now we're getting ready for harvest. And the other farmer says, yeah, it's probably going to burn it all up, And so this other farmer, he gets to thinking, he thinks, man, I gotta instill some positive qualities in this guy. And so he comes and he says, man, we need to go out fishing. And so both of them go out there fishing in the boat, and the positive guy, he's got his dog. He just bought this dog and trained him, and they're out there in the middle, and so you know what, I said fishing, but I meant hunting. So sorry about that, duck hunting. And so anyway, they're out there duck hunting, and the positive guy, he pulls out his rifle. There's a duck there, and blam! He shot that duck right out of the sky, and it landed in the lake. And the positive farmer, he says, watch this. He said, go get him, Fido. And so Fido jumps out of that boat, and he runs across the water, grabs that duck, and runs back and jumps in the boat, never sinking in the water. And so the positive farmer, he's just beaming and said, well, what do you think about that? He said, well, that's just what I thought. The dog can't even swim. So, it's interesting that we've got people in the world that are positive and people in the world that are negative. What do we call optimist and pessimist? So, it reminds me of Norman Vincent Peale, The Power of Positive Thinking. So I read that book years ago. Very good book, and so it is really beneficial to have a positive mental attitude, PMA, positive mental attitude. But that's not really the extent of where I want to take you today. Over in Philippians chapter 4, verse 10 through 13, it says, I rejoiced in the Lord greatly that now at length you've revived your concern for me. You were indeed concerned for me, but you had no opportunity. Not that I'm speaking of being in need, for I've learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I've learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So, I've thought about this, and if you know any at all about the story of Paul, he started out against the church, persecuting the church, and against Jesus and all these things. Well, he had a visitation from Jesus, and that changed his course. And so from that time on, he began to proclaim Jesus and say, Jesus is the way, but what really turns my brain sideways is some of the experiences that Paul had. there was one experience where he went in and he preached about Jesus, and there was a lot of people that were accepting Jesus and coming to God. And but what happened, it was affecting the idol worship. And so the people that sold the idols, that made really good money, they got upset. So they stirred up the crowd, and so all the crowd turned against Paul, not the ones who had received the Lord, but the others, which was the majority. And they took Paul out of the city. And back in that day, the way they did things, they picked up stones and they peppered you with stones until you died. And so they left him out there, peppered him with stones, and like he was dead. And he probably did die, and the Lord did raise him back up. But that's neither here nor there. Anyway, the disciples or his helpers got all around him, and then the people that he'd talked to, and they nursed him back to health. And when he was able to walk and move again, you know what he did? He went back into that same town. Now that just reminds me, you got some people that are ultra pessimists. It doesn't matter what you do. Even if a dog's running across the water, the thought is, well, the dog can't swim. Well, yeah, there's, you know what I mean? People like that. And then there's people that you better hold on to their shirt, because if you don't, they're going to walk off that cliff and think it's going to be a soft landing. And so optimism and pessimism. So there is balance, and in the world has a way to deal with this, and it's called psychology. And I'm not against psychology. There's a lot of really good stuff. But you have to understand that there is no answer that this world can offer that didn't first begin with what God said. And in other words, there's not a problem you're ever going to face that God's word doesn't have an answer to. So, what is it about the issues in life? I mean, really, I wrote this down in Canada, and I'm not going to read it to you, but, there's times when I'm drawn to God, and then there's times when I'm not. And it's like, you know what? I just want to waller in whatever it is, and I don't. It seems like the more I go towards God, the harder life gets. And so I'm just thinking, man, just give me a break here. And so I'm thinking about this up in Canada, and I'm thinking, why? There's times when I'm just like, I don't want to be anywhere else except in the presence of God. And then there's other times where, you know what? You go over in your room and I'm going to be in my room. Wow. How is that? So I look at that and I think, well, the Bible talks about the battle of the flesh and the spirit. So, and for those that don't understand that, well, the spirit is the part of us that wants to be in union with God. And the flesh is the part of us that wants him to just stay over there in that other room. Let me live my life. So the flesh is operated by the physical senses, the taste, touch, smell, feel, and hear. These natural senses that we have, that's what the flesh is attached to. So in other words, if you're not feeling good, the thought is you not only don't want God to be around, but you don't really want anybody to be around, right? Yeah, come on, let's get real here. So, what we do is we tend to cover up those feelings, those things that are apparent to us on the inside, and God can see, but we can sure hide it from everybody else. And what happens is we tend to develop habits, and habits turn into addictions. And there's so many forms of it. You got just so many: drugs, alcohol, sexual stuff, and and all these things that we put in there. Why do we do that? Because we got issues in our life. So when I talk about the issues, I'm talking about big issues. And that's what I call trauma. And this is where psychology comes in, and they bring up and they say, well, we got to dig up what it is that really got you. What was it? Was it when you were 5 years old and your parents made you sit in the corner for 2 hours and that just caused a trauma in your life? Now, I'm not minimizing it. Come on. There's a lot of people that have experienced stuff that is unbelievable. And what that does, the damage. But I want you to understand that we all face trauma, and there is a cure. Because if we don't deal with the trauma, it doesn't matter what we get, it's not going to be enough. Whether it's emotional, mental, physical, spiritual, whatever it may be. And see, that's what we do at Infinite Grace Ministries. We don't just take psychology and dig up the reason why you feel the way you do. And in reality, that is only a source of what you may feel, but it's not, you won't find the cure there. I mean, it's good to know why you have a trauma, but it's also good to find the cure for the trauma. And so psychology brings in the thoughts of, well, you got to think of, that you can do this and you can do that, and it's all based upon you, and if you don't do it, it ain't going to happen. Well, the way the Bible brings it out is God says, listen to what I say. He says in Ephesians chapter 4, he says, be renewed in the attitude of your mind. Well, how do you do that? How do you do that? Well, Romans 12:2, it says, don't be conformed to this world, be transformed by renewing your mind. And how do you renew your mind? By what God says. Because there's a lot of really smart people out there that can help you in a temporary way, but there's only one who can help you in an eternal way. And that's the one who created you, the one who has more concern for you than maybe even you have for yourself. Now, that's hard to believe, because a lot of times what we do is we get in these trauma positions in life where something stirs this trauma, and then again we get in the mindset, well, God, you stay in your room and I'll stay in mine. Well, then we get through this somehow, some way, get on the other side of it, and then we look back and say, oh man, I messed up and I told God to stay in the other room, and now, I'm back to my senses, and I want to be back in relationship with him, and I messed it up. And so and then we go back to the habits and the addictions, whatever they may be. What are these for? To cover up that hole, that hurt, that pain. Folks, I know what it's like to receive the phone call that says, I don't want to be married anymore. I know what it's like to lose a daughter after 10 years. I know what it's like to be rejected. I know what it's like to look at my bank account and look at my bills and say, I don't know how I'm going to pay these bills. I know what it's like. But if I just talk to you about that stuff, then yeah, you can relate to me. But what I want to tell you about, I know what it's like to be on the other side of it. I know what it's like to be so mad at God, to holler at God, to cuss God. because of what was going on in my life. But on the other side, he said, I love you. And that, my friends, is what never fails. That is the place that we're all looking for. That doesn't remove the trauma, but it gives reason to the trauma. Because God says, if you love me and you're called according to my purpose, don't care what happens, I'm going to turn it for good. And therefore, this vessel, this person here, the one who really doesn't deserve to be here, is able to be here and to tell you there is a hope and that there is a cure for that thing that's in you. How do you do it? First of all, you talk to God. Talk to Him. Talk to Him just like I'm talking to you. If you're hurt, tell Him you're hurt. If you're mad, tell Him you're mad. Whatever the emotion may be honest. But the second thing is, you got to listen. If you don't listen, it's not a real conversation. It's just you telling God, you got a problem. But you know what? God rarely talks about problems because you know why? He doesn't have any. And so you listen. Number one way God talks to you is through His Word. Open that Bible up. Read it until He speaks to you. And the last thing you do is you find somebody that's connected to God, that's going to help you, that's going to help to navigate this course. Because obviously, we aren't meant to do it by ourselves. Even though people have hurt us, God uses people to help. Find the person that's going to be connected with you and help you out of this situation. God never intended for you to have the trauma, but He made a way for you to be healed from it. And I want you to know it's not over. He's got you. Just allow Him to do what He does. He's so good. He's so good. Even when we tell Him to stay in the other room, He's still good. He wants to do more for you than you could ask or think. Trust Him. I hope this helps you today, because it sure helps me. Have a great day.